stand for the national anthem.
Stand and sing of Zambia, proud and free, land of wealth and joy in unity, victors in the struggle for the right. We won freedom's fight, oh, one, strong and free. Africa is our own motherland, fashioned with and blessed by those who blend. Let us, all our people, join as one, brothers under the sun. Oh, one, strong and free. One land and one nation is our cry. Dignity and peace in Zambia's sky, like a noble eagle in its flight. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free. Praise be to God, praise be, bless our great Zambia, Zambia, Zambia. Free men we stand under the flag of our land. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free.
We may remain standing for a prayer by Ms. Wezi Sikawanga, Assistant Manager, Payment Systems Designation.
Shall we pray? My God and my Father, we want to thank you for this morning. We give you all the praise and all the glory for gathering us in this fashion. We pray that even as this meeting progresses, you will be with us. We ask for your wisdom, your guidance, and your grace throughout the entire proceedings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Wezi. We may be seated. Governor, Deputy Governors, members of the Monetary Policy Committee, directors here present, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I welcome you to our first Monetary Policy Committee press briefing for 2025. As you may already be aware, the Monetary Policy Committee held its meeting on Monday and Tuesday, and this morning the governor will announce the decision of the committee. As always, we are live on ZNBC TV1. We are also live on our Bank of Zambia Facebook page. To our online audience, we acknowledge your presence. Thank you for joining us. Allow me to state that the press briefing this morning will be in two parts. The governor will present the Monetary Policy Committee decision. We will then have the Q&A, and then governor will discuss features of the new currency, something that is already in public domain, which you got hold of yesterday. Allow me at this point to introduce to you the dignitaries in front of you. We have the governor, who is flanked by the two deputies, Deputy Governor Dr. Francis Chipimo on his right, and Deputy Governor in charge of administration, Mrs. Reka Chifue Muhango, on his left. Next to Mrs. Muhango, we have Director in charge of research, Dr. Jonathan Chipili. Next to Dr. Chipimo, we have Director in charge of financial stability, Mr. Goodson Kataya. Without wasting much of your time, I will at this point invite the governor to address the press.
Thank you very much, Bessie, and may I join Bessie in welcoming you to this very first MPC media briefing for 2025. Happy New Year to everybody. That we are here is testimony that we crossed over into 2025. Now, 2025, like the year that has just gone by, was also starting on a very a tough time, and obviously we have to adjust to those changes to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that lie ahead. Now, this morning, I have the pleasure, like in previous times, to present to you the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee, which had been meeting over the past 2 days. As indicated, this time around, we have two events going on in the same time slot that we have for the usual Monetary Policy Committee briefing. So this means that I'll have to be a bit more efficient in how I communicate the decision of the committee on the monetary policy stance, so that we have time to look at the other equally important matter that is just unfolding. Now, this presentation will be in 7 segments, starting with the decision of the committee. That will be followed by inflation outturn and outlook. We then take a look at what is going on in the foreign exchange market, and relatedly look at the reserves position as at December. We quickly take a look at what is happening in the credit market by looking at credit developments, and then before concluding, we'll look at economic activity, how we are faring in that space. At its February 10 to 11, 2025 meeting, the Monetary Policy Committee decided to increase the monetary policy rate by 50 basis points to 14.5%. The underlying reason for doing this is to steer inflation back to the 6 to 8% target band, which is the medium-term objective, and help anchor inflation expectations, which we have observed have been persistently or are persisting to be above this target band. Now, to give you more color on what really is going in the inflation space, I'll now look at the inflation outturn. What we note is that in the fourth quarter of 2024, average inflation rose to 16.3% from 15.5% in the third quarter. The first part is showing the average movements in inflation on a quarterly. These are annual figures, but done on a quarterly basis. Then we have end of period segment in the bottom of the table. So if you look at the top part of the table, the first row after the dates that are indicated there, you see that the overall inflation has risen to 16.3% in the fourth quarter from the 15.5% in the third quarter. So what is of greater importance is to see that this is a trend which is going up, and that's a concern. And I think this also become clear when we come to the second segment of our conversation this morning. When we break down into food and non-food inflation, you see that the food inflation has risen to 18.3% from 17.6%. Equally, non-food inflation has gone up, as I already indicated, from 12.5% to 13.5%. When we look at the end period numbers, this is for the quarter as a whole, we see that in the fourth quarter, inflation ended at 16.7 compared to 15.6. But it is important to point out here that whereas we ended the quarter at 16.7, we have started the new year at the same level. So this is an important marker which we are looking at very, very closely. And part of the reason why we are taking the action that we are taking is to try and hold that with a view that let that be the peak for inflation so that we can begin to move to lower levels of inflation. Now, when we break the same into the categories of food and non-food, again, there you note that food was at 18.6%, whereas non-food was at 14.2%, both of which were higher than in the previous period. But of significance is, if you look at what I said at the beginning, is that non-food moved up quite significantly because of this adjustment in the non-tariff. So you see that it moved by almost 2 percentage points during this period. So that's what we are concerned about. Now, when we drill down to the components of these categories, this chart, that if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you note the blue, the deep blue coloring, the last bar there. You see that the blue is much, much magnified. That's the impact that we are talking about, which has pushed the non-food up. The others are kind of responding to that, but not to the same magnitude. So you have chance to look at that more closely. And when we look at the right-hand side of the screen, this is where we are showing what overall food inflation has been. You see in both cases, this is rising. Now, in the case of food, you see that bread and cereals came down somewhat, but then fish went up, and then you see also vegetables. So those were the two main categories, which food groups that pushed inflation up. I think we have said something about vegetables in the past. I think this is a reflection of us not growing as much vegetables as we used to do, and that is having an effect on our food basket. Now, to move further, now when we look at the projection of inflation over the quarters, we see that this is also projected to remain outside the target band. It is actually expected to average 14.6% in 2025 compared to 13.9% that we reported in November. Now, the relatively higher profile for 2025 is largely influenced by the recent increase in inflation and the persistent depreciation of the exchange rate. But maybe before I move on to that, let me show you this chart and the table. What we have on the chart, these are projections. If you look at the chart on the left there, the red dotted line is showing what our forecast was in November last year, that is last quarter when we met. But this time around, when we met, this is what the blue dotted line shows. It shows that actually the profile has changed, meaning that it's moving away from coming down quickly. But in both cases, there is a downward movement. But that downward movement is sluggish, such that in the current forecast, we see that it's not coming down into the target band. And that's the reason why we feel we need to do something to steer it back to this. The brown bar there is shaded part is showing where we ought to be. It's not tomorrow or the day after or the next day, but we must be moving towards this in the medium term. That's the target we have given to us in the budget. So when we look at numbers, this is what we see on the right-hand side, that for the year 2025, the average inflation will be about 14.6. That still is above the thing. Yes, in 2026, we see that this is going to come down, but it's still above the target band that we are looking at. Now, in the November projection, that's why this difference is appearing there. We had forecast that inflation would be 13.9 in 2025 and 9% in 2026. But there's a caveat there in that we were for 2026 measuring for 3 quarters, because at the point where we were, the 8 quarters were going to end in the 3rd quarter of 2026. So the 10.6 is in a sense not a good comparison to that, because this is for the entire 4 quarters of the year. But you get the gist that in both cases it's going down, but in the present circumstance it's still a bit more elevated, and that's what is informing us to take a look and do something about that. Now, the other very fundamental point to stress is that we undertake some surveys to gauge the players, the economic agents' perception of what inflation is going to be over the coming period. And what we have observed, this is what we are saying, survey data, which you can access through that reference on our website, is showing that the expectations of those that we survey is that inflation will persist to be above that. Now, why should we worry about that? We worry about that because if the expectation of you as an agent is that something is going to happen, it tends also to mold your behavior in terms of what you want to do or will do. So if the expectation is that prices are going to continue to rise, that means now you factor that into your operations. And that is not very helpful for us to bring inflation down. So we need to change that perception for people to feel that, yes, inflation is going to come down, and then be motivated to do better in the period ahead. So that's one of the key reasons why we thought that it was important to temper that kind of perception, because it's not helpful in the long run to our objective of getting inflation down. So we are also saying that when we look ahead from where we are, it's gratifying to see that actually, whereas previously the balance was that of risks, that is, was tilted to the upside. What do we mean by that? In previous projections, or when we looked at the future, it was showing that there were more risks for inflation to go up. But this time around, we see the opposite. We see that actually there are chances that inflation will come down. So that's why we have to adjust that feeling that inflation will continue to go up. But why do we feel this? Well, we note that the rainfall pattern has been much better this year than it was last year. So there is a high likelihood that would get some good harvest, which obviously will have an effect, a positive effect, that is, on prices of food items. Now, even in the case of the power, we expect that there will be some adjustment, notwithstanding that the tariffs for these emergency tariffs have been extended for another period. But I think it's important also to see the stability of supply. It's not just an issue of the tariffs being raised, but it's really the availability of what you are paying for. So our sense is that things in that space are likely to improve, which means that that focus that we have made there could actually come down. So that has also an impact on the magnitude of the change that we had to consider for adjusting the policy rate. So, but we are also alive to, I think, as Mr. Tembo Jr. indicated at the beginning of this session, there are evolving things on the global scene. There are all these trade wars that could arise. So this is likely to have an effect, most importantly, on the value of our kwacha versus other currencies, notably the US dollar. So we have to start making preparations in how we respond to those developments. There are also heightened geopolitical tensions. These have consequences on what happens everywhere. So we say that those risks are there, but the domestic side, or in terms of risks, we see those to be weighted more towards positive outcome. So it's a question of how the balance will turn out to be. Then now let me move to the other market, which creates a lot of pressure on inflation in our country. In the fourth quarter, we note that the kwacha depreciated against the US dollars by rising to 4.5% from 1.7% in the third quarter. So that chart is right there on next side by side. So that black line, that's what is showing you the exchange rate of the kwacha against the US dollar. Now, these bars up and down, these are showing you the percentage changes that we are looking at. So read those from the right hand scale. There are two scales there. The left hand is showing the nominal exchange rate of the kwacha to the dollar. So you see that is going up. But now when you look at those changes from period to period is what you measure from the right hand side, and you see that this is what I'm saying, that in the fourth quarter it is moving up. There is that high bar which pulls all the others because we are talking of the average. Now you can see in January already that the pressure is also beginning to mount, but not as big as it was in the previous quarter. Now, what really explains this is that supply has continued to be subdued, but demand, on the other hand, has been rising. And that is putting this pressure because exchange rate is a price. But why has demand been rising? I think the consequences of the drought is one of the key drivers of that. Now, the other aspect is what I said earlier, the dollar had been rising, which means that it puts pressure on other currencies. Now, the other concern, which is rising, that if with the tariffs that are being applied, there will be policy adjustments, say in the US, in Europe, it means that there will be now a round of hikes of policy rates in those countries. And when that happens, then we see ourselves seeing reversal of capital flows and the depreciation in our currencies. So this is why I think the core for us to really ramp up the production and export of what we produce is extremely important. Moving along, we see that the main source of supply in the market continue to be the mining sector, which is supplying 60.1 million dollars as compared to 52 point, which brought the total supply to 526.2 million in the period that we are looking at. So this was driven to a large extent by observed rising production in the mining sector. But of this amount, commercial banks absorbed $239.7 million. This was a little higher than what was in the previous quarter. In the previous quarter, they took up $232 million. But the net purchases from the sector was $286.5 million, which was remitted to the Bank of Zambia. That reflected an increase from the previous amount of $233.9 million. So we give those on the right side in the chart there, which will show you those pounds. But what we are saying is that on a net basis, market support by the bank declined to $197.8 million from $230.8 million. So what people might ask, why is this? Well, we have other obligations that we need to observe or meet. Notable in this regard is obviously the net international reserves that we have to meet in order to get the review program to move forward. And indeed, we had last year the IMF conclude the fourth review of our ECF arrangement. So this then helped us in a way to also build, because with that conclusion, we had some inflows that were enabled. Now, what we are saying is that because supply is not continuous, it's intermittent, what we see that this affects the activity in the interbank market. In other words, for the market to remain vibrant, you need continuous supply. Not today you have something, tomorrow you don't have something. That affects the operations of the market. So what you see in the chart, there are 6. You see that disparity coming out very clearly. Whereas you see in the third quarter, we had $324.4 million. In the fourth quarter, see how much went through the market. So this is what we are saying, that there was less activity because the supply was not as huge. Now, another variable that we look at closely is the demand pipeline, because that gives you a sense on what direction things could go. And we see that outstanding demand for foreign exchange rose to a high of $52.7 million on November 4th from $7.4 million at the end of September. So you can see, if you again look at that, you see that Q3, there was quite a lot of supply. Now, when you come to the fourth quarter, that was small, and this is reflected to this. In the first quarter of this year, up to February, we see that there has been moderation in the amount of outstanding demand, which is averaging 8 million. But as of February 10th, which is on Monday, it was standing at $5.5 million. So ordinarily, these are figures that shouldn't result in movements in the exchange rate, but because of the tightness of the market, they tend to have an impact on the exchange rate on a day-to-day basis. So what we also observe is that with that low level of outstanding amount, this in a sense also explains why you have seen some relative stability in the kwacha, which was trading at 28.08 kwacha as of February the 10th. So this chart on the right is just giving you the historical and the current standing of this outstanding demand. So when you see those peaks, they relate also to what you see in the movement in the exchange rate. A related area which you also tend to have a keen interest on is where we are in terms of gross international reserves. Our gross international reserves increased to $4.31 billion, which is equivalent to 4.6 months of import cover at end December 2024. This government has said already the increase, but in terms of month cover, it hasn't changed from the September position, remains 4.6. I think it's important to appreciate here how this comes about. We are looking, when determining the import cover, we look at the prospective imports. So that's what is in the denominator, and we look at the reserves, then it will give us how many months of import cover we would have. So the increase, like I said, was occasioned by the inflows we had from the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and of course the IMF following the conclusion of the fourth review of the ECF. It's important here to understand that the ECF, or the fund program, is catalytic to other players. If we don't have that positive conclusion of the review, these flows do not come as well. So that's the linkage that must be understood very clearly. In the fourth quarter of last year, our gold purchases amounted to $7.9 million, which brought the total holdings of gold to $225.1 million since we started this program in December 2020. Now, credit developments on the other hand, were not as encouraging, as overall credit growth slowed down to 5.4% year on year in December 2024. So in the previous quarter, it had gone to 11.8%. So these are figures that are concerning, because given where we are in terms of growth, we are not hitting the levels that we would like to see happening. Then you might ask, but why are you raising the policy rate? I think in anticipating that question, the reason is that inflation is omnipresent enemy that we have. If we don't deal with inflation, it erodes many things. So even credit, the quality of credit would be much better if inflation is low and stable. So with high inflation, it quickly eats into that space, which is not very good. So what we are saying is that over the same period, private sector credit growth reduced further to 20.7% from 29%. These are nominal figures, by the way, but the direction is clear that it is lower overall and in terms of the private sector. What we also note of import here is that lending to government through government securities also reduced. This is very important. Why? Because all along, I think we have been saying there must be fiscal consolidation. Why do we want that fiscal consolidation? We want that fiscal consolidation so that there is less crowding out of the government private sector. So with the government managing its affairs well, then its recourse to the market is reduced, which means that the banks and financial institutions then would have to go to their traditional ways of making money, which is lending. So as we have shared previously, we are still concerned that the lending, the deposit to lending, the loans to deposit ratio is low, which means that there is not as much intermediation. So we'd like to see a lot more activity in that space, because that's what is going to grow the economy on a sustainable basis. So just to give you the amount of government securities that are outstanding is 229.37 billion kwacha as at end December 2024. Out of this amount, the non-resident holdings stood at 57.64 million, or 25.1%. Now, there is an issue here which we have highlighted previously, that as part of the debt restructuring process, we had to put a cap on non-resident investments in our domestic market. So this has hit us to a large extent, because when these flows come, they contribute in two main ways. One is through the inflow of foreign exchange, because we conduct the auctions of our government securities in kwacha. So they have to convert whatever foreign currency they have into kwacha to be able to participate. So that augments the supply of foreign exchange. The other aspect is to do with the price, which is the interest rates or the use on government securities. What happens? That means they kind of up the competition in that space. Now, because of this cap, this is not happening. So we see that a number of them, when they have coupon payments and the maturities do occur, they do not reinvest, because that cap is already reached. And that there is a cap, it also affects the behavior, Because if you know that there's limited space that you want, where you can invest, you are not as interested as you can be. The other thing that we should point out is that inflation is another variable that is looked at very carefully, and the direction of movement in the exchange rate, because you don't want to invest it. Remember, I said that you convert into dollars, into kwacha at a certain exchange rate. So when your maturity comes, you have to reconvert to dollars. Now, if the exchange rate has depreciated, that means you get less of the dollars that you had brought in. So these are very important considerations for investors, more so long-term investment. The final part of our presentation is on economic activity. We see that this continued to sluggish in the fourth quarter as business conditions for the private sector deteriorated further due to the severe impact of the drought. Again, here you ask, but why are you raising the policy rate? Well, again, we want a quality type of growth, because with inflation rising, that is not going to be very helpful. So look at it this way, that we are looking forward. We are not looking where we are or where we are coming from necessarily. We use that as a lesson for what we should do going forward. So our eyes are focused on the future. How do we position ourselves to take advantage of whatever opportunities that can come? Now, when you have high inflation, those opportunities tend to get tighter. So what we are saying is that real GDP growth for 2024 is expected to significantly lower at 1.2% from the 5.4% outturn into that. I think this is a figure you have already seen in a different fora, the town hall conversation, and also in the ECF fourth review. However, and that's an important however, because we expect that in 2025, growth will rebound. This is consistent across all the forecasters, that there is an expected rebound in growth of our economy. So the idea is that we must be ready to really partake in that. And some of the drivers there are in agriculture, energy. This is where we are also putting our mouth where money is, by the SRF, which we introduced to try and mitigate some of the impact of the drought. While at the SRF, I should also indicate, in anticipation of a question from you colleagues here, that how does this fit in with the SRF? Well, we insulated the SRF to a very big degree, that when we make the decision that we are making, as we have done, this should not translate in the adjustment of the lending rate for those who have already borrowed. So that is important, because if we do not do that, then we are held hostage to that arrangement. So we manage this very closely so that we don't send signals that will impair its uptake. Again, the other point is that there's a cap of 10 percentage point, which means that relative to other sources of financing is to still be much lower. So we are wrestling with the banks to see that there is increased uptake of this facility in the period ahead, which would help to moderate the impact of drought, and more importantly, because the focus is on agriculture and energy, we could contribute to the food basket. So this is the end of the presentation. Just to reiterate that given that inflation remains higher than the target band, we have had to raise the policy rate, and more so that inflation expectations remain elevated. We think it's important that we anchor those expectations so that inflation can begin to move in the right direction. Thank you for your listening. God bless.
Thank you very much, Governor, for that presentation. So like I said, this was the first part, and so we'll take questions. May I request that we restrict the questions to monetary policy issues, and the questions on the new currency can come in the second segment after Governor's presentation. So as always, please indicate your name and the institution that you represent before you ask your question. I will ask that those that have got questions can move to where we have the backdrop there, so we can take 3 questions.
Thank you. My name is Donald Mumba. I'm the managing editor for the Zambian Business Times. I've got 2 questions, Governor. The first one is the US. There's a new leadership there. New policies are rolling out, and for Zambia, we've seen already what is coming up through USAID. I think some of our colleagues who work there and so on, there's uncertainty. We know our Ministry of Health as well relies largely on some of the inflows from there. Have we done an analysis of what the total impact is annually in terms of FX inflow into the Zambian economy? And then secondly, what are we doing, or what are you doing as the central bank, obviously working with the larger government, to plug that gap? Because I see it again as coming to spoil some of the projections that may be there. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, please.
Good afternoon, Governor and the panel. My name is Kalunga Mope from Millennium Radio. My question is similar, I think, to the first question. And it seems, I think for quite a number of years, I was telling someone, since I was a kid, I've been hearing the Bank of Zambia say they want to reduce inflation to 6 to 8%, which has not happened. And I've grown now, and then the strategy doesn't seem to change, and inflation keeps on going up. And at the end of the day, the economic growth is being affected, among other things. We continue to be downgraded. There's a conversation to say, don't you have a different strategy? And there are certain stakeholders in the private sector that's saying to say, bring them on the table, let them give you some of these advice. You can sit on the table, and maybe at the end of the day, we can see this inflation coming down, and especially see economic growth at the end of the day. I don't know what's your take on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kalunga. Next.
My name is Justin Perry from Zambia Business Times. So my question is, last year we were told that the full implementation of the Export Proceed Tracking Framework, EPTF, will be done in 2025, as the focus was only on tracking goods, not services. So my question is, how far have you gone as the central bank in regards to the full implementation of this initiative, and what are some of the benefits that have been achieved so far? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What we are trying to do is to steer things in a certain direction. But there are so many moving parts at any given time. So the policy rate is one of the key tools that we use. So this is why I think, like you have said, it's important that other players also come to the game, so that we are having a concerted effort to do that. Now, having said that, I think an understanding of microfinance also is very important. For the lender, their interest also is to get back what they have lent. So it's important also that conversation to be had, because if you are too expensive, it means that your very source will be affected. But the players will cite different concerns, cost of their own money, where they get the money. So it's a very tricky arrangement because we are not controlling interest rates, and we wouldn't want to do that because when that was tried, in fact, even that expensive credit was not available. So you have a worse off situation. So what we try to do is to engage these parties to see how best we can work towards moderating these interest rates. But at our level, it's more macro. So the things that we do, like lowering inflation, we want that not to be one of the reasons that is not cited as to why the cost of money is going up. There is that effort is underway, and we are all committed to do our part so that we deliver growth to this economy. We have to work together should help us get to that point where some of these things will be things of the past. So it may not be a very satisfactory answer because there is no one kind of answer that will satisfy that, because it's affected by a myriad of things. Now, impact of developments in the US and the total forex flows. I think we do track, maybe did you any say this, but the Ministry of Finance, because that's a budgetary issue, from what we hear, that the humanitarian type of support is not frozen. So we have yet to hear exactly what's the residual that is going to be affected by that. But I think the Minister of Finance would be in a strong position to really give you item by item as to what is going on. So for us, we are looking at the operations of entities that are here. So I don't know if you have additional points. So maybe you can take on also this, which is related to the Mr. Justin Piri's question, and I'll come back also to on the target.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Maybe just to start to add on the Governor, on the inflation issue, Kalunga's question on inflation not coming down. I think it's important to, if you go back, say to 2020, it's important just to look at the facts. And there are obviously two very big things which have happened over this period. One was obviously COVID around 2020, the other is the drought, which we've seen. Of course, we also saw inflation go up from 2019, 2020, up to around 24%. But then again, it did come down towards the end of 2021, right through into 2022, and when it settled around the top end of our target band, the overall rate. And it stayed there for a bit of a year. And then the drought came in and we've seen inflation begin to rise up again. So I think it's important to have that history of inflation, that context correct. And because it points to what are some of the big things which have led to the increase in inflation. And the current drought and the implications of it, we have governors discussed and we've all discussed. These are important shocks which have had an impact on prices. And of course, there are many measures which the government has taken to try and deal with them. Jason, coming to your point on the export tracking framework, indeed, this 2024, we implemented the export tracking framework from January, and that was basically the part which was then demanding that everybody must bring their export proceeds through into their account here, and then they could use them as they wished after that. We had, I think the numbers were still compiling, but I think it's around 7.4 billion or so last year in terms of the receipts which were recorded. Of course, there is also a reconciliation aspect of that, which means that when these flows come in, we have to be able to then trace them to the specific exports using the database from ZRA. Now, at current levels, we're really only reconciling about half of that, so about around 4 billion. And that's something which we're working on. Part of that is a story that we haven't yet begun to track the services, and that work has been going on towards the end of last year, and hopefully we should implement that this year. The other aspect which will help us reconcile is also to track the imports, which I think Governor mentioned, because then we'll have a 360-degree view of when you conduct economic activity in Zambia with the rest of the world. We should be able to say if you've exported, we've been able to track the flows which come from that. If we can't, we can then follow up and say, well, you exported this, why? Or what happened to the proceeds and why have they not come back? We can also track what happens in terms of how you spend them. And if we can tie that with the imports, that's also very powerful, because we have a lot of people, when they use the electronic balance of payments, who will record, I'm paying for imports. But there isn't a mechanism to track and verify that, yes, I've now tied those imports you said you were paying for, they've now come back into the country. So when those two aspects are done, I think it will greatly improve our ability to verify the exports. But it is working, and we have continued to develop and improve the system. As I said, this year, hopefully we'll be done with services and imports. I think on the USAID, I can only say it's the ministry, I think, is the most appropriate institution to look at what that does. But obviously, Governor, as you indicated, to the extent that we see less flows into the economy, that means less supply in the foreign exchange market, and obviously that has implications on demand and supply dynamics in the FX market. And the last point, maybe I should just add, just on the non-banks and borrowing. I think Governor did mention the fact that we have introduced a facility, which is going to try and look at helping with energy and food. This is a direct response to saying, if there's an issue with credit, how can we make sure that you can have affordable credit, but more importantly, on a longer term basis? This is 7-year money. And we have now capped the margin which banks can charge to 10 percentage points. Now, for some individuals, like the non-banks, they've come back to us and complained actually and said the 10% margin is too small. But it's important that we have a conversation to say, why is it too small? What are the factors? And how can, as Governor has said, us sit down and then say, how can we reduce those factors? But that's a very specific thing which we have done. The second is the guarantee fund, which we have set up, which is also 5 billion kwacha, which we will be launching relatively soon. And again, that is hopefully meant to mean that the cost of borrowing, the risk, can be mitigated and you can have less cost of funds for businesses. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I need to add on the issue of why we keep coming on the same 6 to 8%. Congratulations, we have been doing that long that you are now. I thought we only started recently. I think it may not be visible that there are changes because the overall inflation has been going up. But you see, why do we do what we are doing right now? Is really to reach out and also enlist input into what we are doing. We share all our work very transparently and consistently. In fact, yesterday I was talking to my colleagues that we seem to be so transparent that we even share the data set that we use, which is an invitation to others who want to go into that, and then let's have an informed conversation. Because you have to distinguish policy making from opinion making. We all have opinions, which we are all entitled to, but facts is not something which we are all entitled to, our own facts. So why we do what we are doing is really to put out information there. So if you have something to engage, let's engage. That's what we are doing. So on our website, we have all our reports. Even the statement that we have released today, we are showing that by end of this month, we'll have a fuller report of all these things that are going on. Why do we do that? Is to inform our fellow stakeholders what we are doing and then come forward. But interestingly, we are asking, have we had any kind of question even on these frameworks? Very rarely people will come, but we'll hear opinions being expressed. That's not very helpful for policy making, because you must delve in, take a deep dive into the matter, and then see if you can come with a different suggestion. So I hope that answers your question, that we are open. So if you know people who want to engage, we are here. That's why we are all here. All the directors are here, deputy governor. We are open. We are not really scared to engage in the meaningful dialogue.
Thank you very much, Governor. So in the interest of time, I think we will proceed to the next segment, where I will call upon the Governor to come and speak to the new notes that have been introduced. Governor.
Thank you very much, Bessie, and thank you, colleagues, for staying on for this part of the presentation. Yesterday, we did issue a public notice that we have introduced a new family of notes and the coins. Now, it's important to appreciate how this comes about, because we have heard many comments, suggestions on how this, especially when it comes to the 500 kwacha note. You know, currency is issued as a family. You don't just issue one note or denomination and that's it. No, it's a family. There are guideposts that we look at. Firstly, we divide currency into 4 main categories. The first, which is, yes, there it is. If you look, is at the top of that chart. The higher denomination notes, not necessarily, for a moment, put a blank on the 500 and 200. Look at the middle column, which talks of the categories. We have what we call high value notes, then we have medium value notes, and then low value notes, and then the coins. These all play a particular purpose in the transactions. So there is a theory underlying all that. It's not just haphazardly done. No. So what then you look at, if now you begin to see what was the high value note is gravitating to medium term, or it's even falls into medium term, then you see the medium term is going actually into lower value notes. Then that relationship is broken. And you need to intervene by introducing other things. Because why do we need money or currency? It's convenience, isn't it? And you want efficiency. You don't want to spend inordinate time to try and just undertake a transaction. Like what will happen now, if you are going into a bank, you spend time waiting because people are counting money. They're counting money. Now imagine you have a business to run. That takes you more time than you need to. So these are some of the considerations, the key considerations. So when we look at our current highest note is 100 kwacha. When did we introduce that? It's been some time now. So what has happened to its value? So the conversation in the previous session is relevant to this, because if inflation continues to rise and rise, then the value of those notes get eroded. So currently, if you look at where we are with the $100, 100 kwacha note, what is it in dollar terms? It's less than $5, But when we issued, it was quite a sizable amount, and that what was supposed to be a note which you keep. It's not a note you go and start trading with, because often if you went with that note, you will not find change, because nobody would have that. Oh, no change, no change. You keep going, but we have gotten to a point where it becomes the go-to note, which means that its store of value function is eroded. So we need to do something about that. Equally, when you look at the 20 kwacha, 10 kwacha, the velocity of circulation has increased so much, such that when we issue them, by the time they came back here, is actually for destruction. You can't reissue them. Not to talk of the 5 kwacha, 2 kwacha. Some of you have been even displaying those which have been brought to you by people out there to say, look how this note is written. So it's interesting that now we are saying we introduce new currency to deal with that. Now again, there's another outcry. Why are you doing this? Why don't you do this? Well, the fact of the matter is that there are other considerations. Security of the note. If your note is susceptible to counterfeit, I'm sure you hear this, you cover them. The stories of this is somebody has been caught, counterfeits. That is a concern to us because we issue this currency. Now, how do we protect that currency? We protect that currency by embedding a lot of security features. So yesterday we issued this notice, which was the beginning of the process. So it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. I think yesterday people expected us to engage toe to toe, with every comment we come, we comment. No, we'll get tired by the time the process is done. So we had, in fact, in that notice indicated that today we'll offer you more information. This will continue until the whole process is concluded. So please, we ask you to help us send this message that we are here as partners to be able to have a smooth transition. We said the launch will be on 31st of March. So between now and that time, we are going to engage in a lot of campaign to explain what I'm just doing now and the features of these notes. So what we are saying is that this is what guided us, that we saw the $100, the 100 kwacha, sorry, I don't know why I keep coming to dollars. It's eroded partly because of the inflation which has been going on. So it's no longer an efficient way of transacting. Then people might say, well, why are you doing this when you are also promoting go cashless? The two go hand in hand. Whereas here in urban places, we are very conversant with some of these things. It's not every Zambian who is. So we have to cater to all other citizens. They are also entitled to the provision of services. Remember, this function that the bank is given comes from the Constitution. If you look at Article 213, it's the first Article A of that. One of the key functions of the bank is issue currency. This is also taken up in the subsidiary legislation, which is the Bank of Zambia Act, which is under Section 17. But to do this, we have to do it orderly the Minister of Finance has to issue an SI to withdraw what is circulating now. So that process is underway. Very soon, the minister will issue that SI, which will spell the time period within which we can exchange. We have heard people that, no, now this is going to be inflationary. Well, the exchange is actually like you are using the existing money you have. It's not going to be given just because you have new currency. You come to the bank, I want new currency, then we give you. No. You have to come with the old currency, exchange one-on-one, you know? So that's how it is conducted. We don't issue without getting. So please help us get that message across, that we will be doing that exchange, because there is confusion and we understand. People say, why are you doing that? No. We have a window, be it 1 year, 1 year, 15 months, 1 year, 3 months. During that period, we'll be getting and giving. But during that period, the two currencies will circulate side by side, because we don't want to inconvenience members of the public. You continue doing your business as normal. But when that time period will come, then that old currency, if you still have it, it will be demonetized. It can't work. It should cease being a legal tender. So we have also heard already that people say, no, but you see, there will be tenders to go for 500. No, there is a mechanism. When you come to exchange money, in those good old days, you would have actually the bank slip, would give you the notes. So they will give you that, no, in what denominations do you want? So we are also looking what is going on, which currency denomination is being in high demand. And we regulate what we give and not give. Because sometimes you can come and say, I want 500. You say, we ask, why do you want 500? Can't you use 200? Because it's the same money, 200 thing. Actually, I can use. But remember, the 500, if you go around, you will not get change, you know? So you may want to start cheating people now that, no, I'll bring you, I have 500. Because it has happened, you know? You find that by the end of that round, actually have exceeded the 500, you know? So again, this is part of the education that we are doing, the sensitization, that we must do. It won't change the money that you earn because of this. Because people are saying, no, if I was earning 1,000, so I just 2 notes. Well, that's the value, is still 1,000. You can choose to get 2 kwacha, you know, you can choose to get 5 kwacha. There is also a complaint that, no, why have you now made the 5 kwacha, 2 kwacha a coin? Colleagues, you have been complaining that the 2 kwacha and the 5 kwacha is wearing out very fast. So what can we do? Respond to that by giving a coin. They said, no, now we have too many coins to carry. What will we do with them? Well, it's a choice you have to make. This is happening also with the mobile payment is not stopped. You can choose to do that. Remember, the 2 kwacha, 5 kwacha is changed to do that. So I think sometimes we tend to exaggerate the challenges before we even encounter them. You know. So, but you see when we launch these notes on the 31st, they are very beautiful notes. They are very beautiful coins. Again, the other thing which we have done, because people have said, no, but we are removing the thing. No. In fact, this family of currency is very rich in our history, the heritage of this country. We have on each of the notes one of the 4s that we have. And we insisted that the names appear very clearly on the note. And this is one of the things which took time to get. Let's look at this. It looks like confusing. There is a very good pattern here. Okay? All of them, look on the left side here. This is the back of the current, the notes. You see that the eagle is in full flight. We are singing the national anthem here. What do we say? Like the eagle, eh? So there is the eagle is there, flying. Then another feature we have put on the notes, which is bringing us together. Look on the right. Every note has one Zambia, one nation. That's a clarion motto which we have. And the coins, they have also the coat of arms, all of them. So if you look at the smallest note to the highest, look at the middle part of on the right there, or even on the left. You look where there are 3 there, or 4, or 2. Look at that color. That color which is in the middle of that is the color of the next note. Okay? So look at the 10 kwacha, you have the brownish color. That's the color of the 20 kwacha. Look in the middle, you have blue. That's the color of the 50 kwacha note. Look at the 50 kwacha note. It has that, the 4s there. That's what becomes the color of the next note. And it goes through and it makes a circle. Okay? So you see the 500, you have the green in the 10 kwacha. So that also should help you to identify these notes when they are presented to you. If you see that they are not talking to each other, then you have reason to believe that there is a problem. Now, the security features increase from low to high. But look at the animals now we are showing. There is that's an anteater on the 10 kwacha. Then you have these antelopes here. Then you have the birds. We have the giraffe. We have the rhino and the buffalo. But on each of the notes, you see that there is big 5 being shown there. So there is a theme on this, which is heritage, our heritage. That's the theme underlying these notes. So the other thing to be alert to, the numbers. Okay, on this one is not, these are samples. You see just one number. Each one has got a serial number. Previously, it was possible if you took a bunch, they were sequentially numbered, right? One, you just said 20. No, now you have to count your money because those numbers are not, and each number is unique and it is tracked in our system here. So when we release these notes, we'll be able to know how long that note has been out there and the currency in circulation will be easily detected. So these are, some of the colors are also very, you can only see them in with a certain aid. So but there are some basic features. You see the watermark. So what is the watermark? You see number 1 there, look for the African fish eagle's hand. So if you get the note, look for that. If you don't see that, start suspecting that this could be a fake note. Security thread. All of the notes have a security thread. Now, that security thread, when you see it, I think Angela can do a better job than I am doing. When you tilt it, it will shift in color. Now, this is one of the key problems counterfeiting has. Because when you counterfeit, even if under 3D, it's hard to replicate that. It will change color. Not only that, it will change, you see the value of the note on that. If you hold it another way, you see the letters BOZ imprinted into that. Just that thread. But now if you go and do your photocopying, it won't do. And the notes are not smooth like paper, this ordinary paper. It's a substrate. Those things are in the thread. They are embedded in the substrate of the note, and the printing is done at once, face and back, which is very difficult to replicate under normal circumstances. But of course, counterfeiters have become quite sophisticated. Then we have features which are only visible to us through some material. We are going to get an app which will show you when we are going after the launch. When you hold the note to that app, you actually see a lot more than what you are seeing. Then the other thing is that you see on each of the note, there is a flower, because we said the flora and the fauna of our country. You see there is a different flower which is there. It's visible, and part of it, you can only see it under certain conditions. So the features are huge on this, but we had to do this because our highest denomination, one, was now becoming a transactional note. Two, the transactions that it can facilitate have reduced. So we have to come up with a higher denomination. Now, people say, well, why are you doing that? But there are many other countries which have a lot higher denominations. And, well, we have examples. I think Angela will share at some point. I think if you go Malawi, the highest is 5,000 kwacha, right? You go Mozambique is 1,000. Tanzania is 10,000. So when we say now 500, say, no, you are going away. We are going, I don't want to name another country and cause problems. So these are some of the things, you see. We compare notes and see what is happening. And remember, the printers are printers which are doing this work here and other countries. The other thing is that they are not all produced by one printer. We went to different, and that was done under very strict procurement process, following all the rules and the laws. So this is why it took us so long. This idea didn't just start now. The board approved this and the theme in July 2021. That's when it was approved. So since that time, we have been going back and forth to do this, do that, until even the Bank of Zambia Act was amended in 2022. At the time when these were being considered, we had the Constitution and the old Bank of Zambia. So I think here is just a tester or a trail that we are giving you, that this process has started. No need to panic. The transactions, the exchange will be done at commercial banks and other designated places, which will be very clearly specified in the SI that the minister is going to be signing. And please send this message clearly. The exchange is free of charge. So if someone is asking for a fee, be careful. You may not be getting your new notes. You may be getting something else. So we will launch this in a very systematic way, but I must quickly add that when we launch on the 31st, we will not immediately have the 50 and the 100 kwacha notes. They are coming a little later, but we have the 200 note, we have the 20, the 10, and the coins below. We will continue with the 5 ngwe and the 10 ngwe in the 50 ngwe is the same, we just that we have printed more, but those will not be recalled. Because what will happen that when the SI comes, there's a recall of the existing currency. So the process of exchanging begins. At the end of that period, like I said, the old currency will no longer be legal tender. So if you know somebody who likes keeping things under the mattress, doubting what happened, that date when it comes, they will become museum material, not for transaction. So I don't know if Angela, you want to add some more, did you?
Thank you once again, and good afternoon. The current family, the features are almost the same, but in this family, we've made sure that they're different, and we did just also come about with these features anyhow. We actually engaged our visually impaired colleagues. They helped us choose the most appropriate features, and so even as we do the campaign, we are going to continue to engage them.
Yes, just to extend that, the size of the notes also is, unlike the current arrangement, where they are all one size, these will be different sizes. The biggest note is the largest, the high denomination of the largest, which is the same size as the current notes. But from that, we are knocking off 5 millimeters until to the 10 kwacha. That is also helpful for the colleagues who are visually impaired, because when you had the same size, it was difficult for them, especially if that tactility is not there. The other thing to point out in terms of the durability, the lower denomination are in double, is paper and the polymer put together. So you find that they are a bit harder than the current series that we have. So all these are trying to give them more longevity. And then when it comes to the coins, is double layered. The 5 kwacha, there was also even a feature there. If you turn it, you see the 5 kwacha embedded there. If you turn it the other way, you see BOZ in there. And it has the marks which the visually impaired can feel. The same goes for the 2 kwacha. The 2 kwacha, it's also specially marked. That one is not continuous, it's broken, which means that someone can feel that this is different. The 2 kwacha, the 1 kwacha is the same 1 kwacha that we had, but it's much. Also the coins we have removed, even these, you will not see the K, okay? There is no K letter, it's the words, 200 kwacha, 500 kwacha. So these are some of the things. So we will be carrying out this, but thank you for listening, unless there are some questions you want to ask. Yes, please.
A quick one. I wanted to find out how much is the Bank of Zambia going to spend to, first of all, do the production. We wanted to have an understanding of the total ballpark figure and eventually who's taking that cost. Obviously, this is cognizant of the current economic constraints in the market. Yeah, thank you.
Is there any way where you've published how much the cost of producing a note currently is, just in general, maybe the average figure of producing a 10 kwacha, 20 kwacha, 100 kwacha note? Because maybe this also helps us understand that you may need to increase the values so that you don't have to print as many notes and so forth as well. So to look at the economics of note production and coin production for the central bank.
Okay. You didn't give your name.
Sorry. My name is Munyumba Mutwale. I'm from the Business Telegraph. And sorry, I also wanted to just add to that question, in dollars, because you did say it's also foreign production as well, in dollars and in kwacha, what is the cost of production of notes and coins?
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Roland Kalangu from Astro TV. The first question that I have, on the issue of money laundering, how is the bank making sure that they collaborate with relevant authorities so that at that time, when money begins to get into the economy, probably some people have hidden money somewhere and would like to take advantage of this opportunity to bring it into the economy. How are you going to work with relevant authorities to make sure that you keep this situation? Secondly, how are you planning to work on the possible confusion on the automated teller machines, especially during that period when the currency, the old and the new will be working side by side, and especially that you have indicated the sizes will not be the same. Sorry, the last one. Do we expect the currency to appreciate or depreciate since there will be a lot of inflow into the economy?
So we are running out of time because they will cut us off. So could you be just precise one question? You ask the colleagues to be here throughout.
Okay, my name is Anna from Crown TV. My question is, I understand you said the reason why the Bank of Zambia thought of coming up with new notes, it's because the highest value note was losing its value. And due to the increase or the rise in inflation. So my question is was it really the main reason as to why we came up with this? Because when we look at maybe in the next 10 years, if inflation is not dealt with, are we also going to consider changing? Because the reason why we are going there is because 100 kwacha can't even buy millionaires, to some comments people are saying. So now, if we keep on having inflation increasing or rising as years goes by, are we still going to keep on changing so as to fit in with the highest value that we have in the country? Thank you.
Okay, so the Donald and the Mutwale, you asked the same question. Oh, you are, sorry. I thought you were done.
Good morning, Governor, and good morning, everyone. My name is Tetiwe Mwemba from Live Radio. Governor, my question is in regards to the issuance of money in circulation. Does the Bank of Zambia keep a record, or does it keep in record how much money is in circulation? And if it does, at what point do you take note of what is in circulation? And currently, is what you know is in circulation a reflection of what is out there in the country, rather, that is being circulated? Thank you.
Okay. All right. So on the cost, I think that's a very sensitive question. Is first, I think what you have to understand, we'll share it at an opportune time, but it's interesting that you all jumped, first of you, on the cost. You are not looking on the other side. I said, you are very angry, maybe not you personally, that the notes are bad. Now we bring the notes, you said, oh, how much did it cost you to give me this note? I just pointed out that the Constitution grants this responsibility to provide currency. Why? That's the question you must. Why did the framers of the Constitution think of making that one of the key functions of the institution? Because every country has a currency, unless those who are in a union or something like that. It's a pride of a country. This, what we are displaying here in these notes, is reflecting our culture, and we must take pride in the note. That's why we get very upset when you give you a note. You just see someone just crumples it and he puts in there. Can you see what goes into that? But we'll share with that in due course. But the point is that we have a responsibility to issue the currency of the country, and we have given you what triggers that intervention. If you find that doing business is being impacted by the cumbersome way of doing what you need to do, then citizens deserve to be given a break by providing this money. So we'll deal with that and we'll give you what it costs. And it's true what you are saying, that a smaller note and a bigger note, the paper is the same, you know. So the cost, especially when we had the same size, you know, the cost, you use the same. This is why even the US dollar, if you are exchanging smaller denominations, they will give you lower value, because to transport it to the US to exchange, it will cost you the same amount as if you are exchanging $50 or $100. So these are the considerations which go into that. But we'll come back to that. Money laundering and the relationship, absolutely, this is something we are not taking lightly. We are working closely with our colleagues, the law enforcement agencies, to make sure that we bring to book whoever is doing that is going to harm us. So including trying to take advantage of this exchange. So word is out that they will be very, very, very alert. Even the banks, the financial institutions that will be doing this exchange, they will be very, very alert. Who is coming to exchange money? You know, you suddenly come with a so big amount of money. Where was it? Those are questions, pertinent questions to ask. You know, we may see crispy notes coming. Why were you keeping them? Those kinds of questions, just to make sure that we are rooting out some money laundering activity and the other people also being used as the conduits for others who may have taken actually our money outside the country. Because it's possible that some people out of the country are holding this money. So they will be, remember what I said, that number will be able to track which note came. So if you are coming with your note which is not reflecting this, we'll find out where you got it. If you are exchanging, surely if you come with a bag, we don't want you to go back with a bag full of money. Why not leave it in the bank? Some of it at least, you know. Otherwise it is very, very risky to you and the issues of money laundering which you are talked about. So why fear these institutions? So all these are opportunities to deal with some of these things. But all this, we want to do it smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. Unfortunately, we can't take any more questions. We have run out of time. But like Governor says, this now signals the campaign, the nationwide sensitization campaign. So then a lot of questions that we have received via our online channels, those will be dealt with as we do the sensitization campaign. Please bear with us. At this point, I would like to thank the production team, the ZNBC, for your support. Until next time, thank you very much.